it's difficult to hear everyone.
Then I'll stop digging for them. Do we have a quorum?
We do, Christy.
Okay, let's go ahead and get this started and see how it goes. I'm now calling the meeting to order of the Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority Board of Directors on June 16th, 2022. Can we do the Pledge of Allegiance? I don't know who is in the room with you, but someone start the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Erica, can we do roll call, please?
Here.
Director Collins.
Here.
Director Jimenez.
Here.
Director Phillips.
Here.
Director Rocha.
Here.
Director Silva.
Present.
Vice President Cronin.
Here.
Alternate Vice President Pittman.
Present.
Lopez is absent.
Okay, translation services, Spanish translation services are available by logging into Zoom. If you are using a laptop or iPad, make sure your microphones are turned off to avoid interference with the OWL system. Does any board member have any corrections or edits to the agenda? Does any staff have any corrections or edits to the agenda? Hearing none. Do we have any public member that has any comments on the agenda? We need a motion to approve the agenda as it's presented.
Vice President Cronin, we do have.
Excuse me, Erica, we do have what?
We do have one member from the public wanting to speak.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
Yes, good afternoon or good evening, board members. My name is Felix Mario Huerta Jr. I'm the union representative negotiating the contract with the authority. I just wanted to point out, and I've sent an email to Patrick, to Colin, your labor relations attorney, as well as to the board president. Item number 6, we're greatly concerned about item 6. I believe it's the Ritchie Trucking and Staffing. We've made it very clear in our bargaining with the district that we are not in agreement to transfer bargaining at work. This resolution was never discussed with us, and it's our belief that this resolution would allow in the next fiscal year up to $150,000 of our bargaining at work, which is essentially the driving of the vehicles, to be transferred to an outside entity. And so I would like to ask that you pull that, allow your general manager to discuss that matter with us, but we do not agree to transfer bargaining at work, and so we would ask that you pull that and discuss appropriately. If it is approved, as you may all know, there is something called an unfair labor practice that would be committed when the board takes action and approves something prior to meeting and conferring with the union. And that would be what would happen if item 6B, the Ritchie Trucking and Staffing were approved today. So we ask that you pull that, please. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Huerta, and we will take that under advisement. Anyone else?
No.
We need a motion to approve the agenda as presented or make changes.
So moved, Phillips.
Thank you, Director. Second,
Chair Cromings, when you say approve the agenda, are you talking about the consent agenda, or what are you referring to when you say that?
the authority has asked that we approve the agenda as it's presented from now on. This is a new practice that we haven't done before. and is ahead of everything else on the agenda.
So there would still be an opportunity to pull items from consent, even if we.
Yes, this
Okay.
has nothing to do with consent. It's just approving the agenda as it's presented. And I think the purpose of it is in case we want to add things to the agenda.
I will go ahead and be the second to the motion to approve the agenda as it is.
Thank you, Director Rocha. With that, call for the vote.
Director Craig,
Aye.
Director Collins, Director Jimenez,
Yes.
Director Phillips,
Aye.
Director Rocha,
Yes,
Director Silva. Aye. Vice President Crowley,
Yes,
and alternate Vice President Tippin.
Aye.
thank you. It's now time for general manager comments. Patrick, anything?
You muted yourself, Chris.
I can't hear you. Is there anything you have to say?
No, we see. No
Thank
comments.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any department manager comments?
Just wanted to, this is Ray, the finance manager, just want to let everyone know that we have scheduled the employees communications dinner for July 29th. Pretty soon for action at 6:30. So the board member would like to attend, please let us know. We're still working through what safety for we'll need to make that happen. We're been a few years since we've done it, so we're hoping we can get that accomplished and get the full set together.
Wonderful. It's been a few years. Anything else? Any
No
other
other
directors?
comments?
Any board director comments? Anyone have anything?
I do. This is Rob. I do.
Go right ahead, Rob.
And actually, first off, I want to make a comment on that employee communications meeting because it has been a while since we've had one. We have some newer board members. I would just like to urge board members to attend. It's a really, really great opportunity to meet with some faces to names and just to see all our great employees. With that being said, I apologize. I'm going to be out of town, so I can't go. So someone could be my proxy. But a couple of other items, I want to pass on some things. King City, we had our annual beautification barbecue yesterday. And I just wanted to thank Gia for speaking. And I know she handed out some of the pails. Do you know by chance how many she handed out? Did you?
I think it was like maybe 20.
Oh, wow. That's a lot. There wasn't that much more than 20 people out there. But that's great that she handed that out. So I wanted to pass on thanks to her, as well as Liz Hall from Waste Management for speaking as well. And then staff knows, but just so everyone knows, I apologize. I will not be able to attend the retreat next week. I'm out in the area for a conference, so I will not be at the board retreat. And that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rob. Any other board members? Seeing and hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to public comment. The public is invited to speak on items not on the agenda today, but still in our purview. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. For the record, there is no public comment received via email prior to this meeting deadline. To make public comment via Zoom, click the raised hand icon, and via telephone, press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to mute or unmute. Do we have anybody wishing to make public comment? I don't see any. Do you see any?
Wait for that's
You're the only one.
Yes. Okay. Hey, Liz Hall here, Public Sector Manager. Thanks for the shout out, Rob. This is a double dip of the message for you, but we will be hosting a cleanup event next Saturday, the 25th in King City from 8 to 10:30. We'll be taking bulky items, and Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority will be there with their HHW truck. So after this, we take a little bit of a break, and then we'll be back in Ferndale on September 10th to do a cleanup event there. So those guys, thanks.
Thank you. Anything else? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have 16 items on the consent agenda. Would anyone like to pull an item? Any board members?
Yes, I would like to pull item 6B, the resolution approving annual expenditure in an amount of $150,000 with Ritchie's Trucking for staffing support services for fiscal year 2022-2023.
Thank you, Anthony. Anyone else?
Would like to pull 5 and 16, the resolution approving the adjustment to the operating budget, and all the way down the update on the Sun Street Transfer Station relocation project.
Anyone else? Can I get a motion to approve the rest of the items?
Christy, I think you have Supervisor Phillips with his hand raised.
Okay, I'm not seeing him. Oh, there he is.
I'm
John?
gonna comment on number 16, so I'm good, so.
John. And Kimberly, you can put your hand down now. And no, do we have any public that would like to pull an item? I'm not seeing any. Are you seeing any, Erica?
No.
Rosie? Okay. Can we get a motion to approve? I can't make it move, but it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it's what? 7. Thank you. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 16. No, 15.
Okay. I think it should have been excluding the words.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Director Craig,
Aye.
Director Collins,
Aye.
Director Jimenez,
Yes.
Director Phillips,
Aye.
Director Rocha,
Yes.
Director Silva,
Aye.
Alternate Vice President Tiffin,
Aye.
and Vice President Rose.
Yes. Let's go to Director Craig and number 5.
So I just wanted to touch base on 5, and certainly understand and recognize the adjustment for the operating budget. And first and foremost, I apologize to the board for it was our intent, council members, Cromines and Rocha and I, to be present. We had a COVID exposure on Tuesday, so we're out of an abundance of caution for everyone in the room. We're on Zoom tonight, but I just, the last time we spoke about Sun Street and the operations of Sun Street and moving Sun Street, I know that we have a request for, I think it's $146,000, if I'm not mistaken, for an adjustment on the operating costs. If I'm operating off of a split screen here, so I apologize if I sound a little harried. But I just, the opportunity to meet with Supervisor Phillips and Supervisor Lopez, the 3 of us met on that subcommittee, and I just think it's premature to be approving an adjustment to the budget till we have a all hands on deck meeting next week. That meeting has been scheduled with Republic Services, with the Solid Waste Authority, with the county and the city, and all present attorneys. And it goes hand in hand with item 16 as well. So I would respectfully request that we table both items to the next meeting until we can get everyone in a room and have a really sort of thoughtful conversation about what our options are. And I know that there are multiple steps on on multiple parts, meaning we've got to get some answers from Republic Services. The county is seeking answers. The city of Salinas needs to approve our rate increase for Republic Services, but all of those elements are sort of entangled between items 5 and 16. So I'm making the respectful request that we table those items to the next meeting. Thank you.
I too support tabling the items. So I don't know how we move forward with this unless somebody wants to make a motion just to approve it the way it is. Can we make a substitute motion to table it?
It wouldn't require a substitute motion, it just require a normal motion to continue.
Table.
Yeah. So Director Craig, if you want to make that motion, I'll second it.
I'll go ahead and make that motion to table 5 and 16. And I know that we have comments just for purpose of discussion. I'll make the motion.
And Chair Crow means if now is the appropriate time to comment, if I may.
Yes.
I also concur with Director Craig's comments. I think that we have a lot of moving parts right now, and we really should be coming to the table to look towards finding a solution in good faith, not certain items moving before others. I think that there's a good opportunity here working with the county and with Republic and with the city to make sure that we can move this forward without having to do any of these budget adjustments. So I just want to concur with her.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion since?
Yes,
Director Phillips?
Yeah, I hoped we'd have more clarification. Pardon me? I hope the sound dynamics of this isn't good at all. But
No.
I hope we'd have better clarification of this. The Director Lopez and I tried to set up a meeting before our meeting tonight. And I got to say, it was tough getting all the parties together. The county has some concerns about the Madison Lane move-in as it presently constituted. And we've had real trouble getting meaningful communication from Republic. And so I tried to set up a meeting with the city of Salinas, us, all the parties involved. And it was really tough to get the Republic attorney and representatives to the table before now. So we have it set up a week from tomorrow, that Friday. And hopefully we'll know more then. But as it is now, I got to say the county has some concerns about as it's presently situated for the move to occur and moving it. So we need more input. We haven't been able to get it from Republic so far. So that meeting is critical. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Director. Anyone else want to comment on this before we take the vote?
Yeah, from our finance manager. I just want to comment on item 5. The earliest we can move close on street right now, based on the notice that we have, is early August. So this budget adjustment is only to allow us to run Sun Street through that day. It doesn't extend past that. If for some reason something happened that needs to be extended past that, we would have to separate discussion in August. But we're just seeking a budget adjustment so that we have funds to run that operation through the beginning of August, which at this point is the earliest we will be able to close that.
So Ray, a point of clarification, in the executive committee meeting, a couple meetings ago, I thought we discussed that we had made contingencies in the budget to get us through until the end of September?
No. No, I was asked a question on what would happen with the budget. At the end, I said a budget adjustment would be necessary, but the additional revenue of keeping Sun Street open should fund that. I'm asking for the expenditure side of it because I'm uncertain what the additional revenue is at this time, and I will adjust that later. I'm hopeful that we would have enough additional revenue to cover this. But at the minimum, I need the expenditure side of the budget approved so that we could operate that transfer station through the beginning of August, which is the earliest we are able to close it for time based on the notices that we have received. What are the consequences if we don't? I wouldn't have budget to operate that transfer station.
Well, so just to refresh the board, when we approved the budget in March, we were operating under the assumption that Sun Street would be closed by July 1st. So there is no expenditure approval in the budget to operate Sun Street for 1 day after the start of this. So this is really just a stopgap to allow us to fund the operation, keep it running until we relocate. And if for some reason it's delayed further, the phrase that we'll be back in August with a request for an additional adjustment to operate for as long as necessary. Yeah, so this is absolutely, we actually have to do this because we have money. We don't have an expenditure approval in this budget because of the original sign.
So essentially, if we don't pass this, Sun Street will close on June 30th.
Well, we will.
Technically, because we won't have the expenditures approved into it.
Yeah, we don't have expenditure. Right, and the public will be left stranded.
Director Craig.
Do we have the capability of retroactively? I mean, like, and I apologize for not knowing offhand. Do we have a July meeting? I mean, do we have the capability of coming and retroactively approving, an extension if we need to? It's frustrating to me, like, and Supervisor Phillips is correct, like, lots of herding of cats, but we managed to pin everybody down for the 24th. And I just feel like that's an impactful, that will be an impactful meeting and give us some solutions to be able to move forward.
I understand that, Director, but our next meeting is in August.
Okay.
And assuming, and I'm hopeful that everything gets resolved next week, but at this point, we still have to operate Sun Street at the minimum of 1 month. Through August, which is the notice that we received, will require, if everything's done in time, require us to move in early August. So we still need a budget to operate Sun Street even if it's only for 1 month.
It's difficult to understand you. I'm sorry. Just the acoustics in that room just makes everybody sound like they're underwater. So it's my understanding that our next meeting is August. But we do have the capability. I mean, you can make the budget adjustment in August retroactively, can't you?
The problem here is that we actually do not have approved expenditures for any operation at Sun Street. Because the original assumption is we were closed July 1st. So the board has to approve an expenditure line item which doesn't exist in the budget just so that we can pay for it. So I mean, we need to have that expenditure in the budget just to legally expend money. So again, this is stopgap. This gets us through a month, maybe a month and a half. The revenues are better. And it allows us to relocate on August 1st if all the issues get resolved and stay on that timeline. And if that timeline changes, we'll have to come back in August and request an additional expenditure to run Sun Street beyond that time period. This is a very small amount of money. This just gets us through the first month and week or so.
Okay. Okay, so I'll go ahead and rescind my motion to go ahead and approve item 5. And then I'm going to continue to respectfully, just because I know you're asking to receive the report. There's no actual decision made, but I don't think it's worth laying any groundwork yet until we have that meeting on item 16. So, so my motion is to approve item 5 and table item 16 to the next meeting.
That's your motion.
Yes.
I'd second that, just because everything I've heard, I have a real concern whether the move is going to be able to take place when it was scheduled. So I'll second the motion.
Can I ask for clarification on that motion? Did you say the motion is to approve item 5, but table item 16?
Correct.
The table, item number 16 is giving us an update on the relocation project. I would like an update on the relocation project. Why would we table that item?
Because it's laying out 3 options, and the update is in consent. So it's not, there's no presentation. It's a consent item. And what I'm saying is the three of us here in Salinas would like to have a meaningful conversation that we have not been able to have with Republic, with the Solid Waste Authority, with the county, and obviously the city, and whoever wants to bring attorneys, just to have that conversation before we say, yes, these are the 3 items that we agree to from the Solid Waste Authority of what those options are. I'm not saying no to them. I'm just doing my best to try to get everyone in a room so we can have a conversation and everyone has a clear path forward. I think it's premature to give us 3 options of what to do with Sun Street before we've even talked about it.
Being taken on the islands, it's just simply informational.
We're being asked to approve and accept the report. So that's my motion, and I'm keeping that motion as stated.
Director Rocha, you have additional comments?
Yeah, I would just, I want to say that I totally understand where you're coming from, Director Cullen. I think that's you. For me, the concern that I have is that it's listed as a consent agenda update on Sun Street Transfer Station. And in that item, there are 3 options that are being presented for consideration. And so for me, my concern is, am I approving a report that would in some way, shape, or form accept those 3 options? I'm sorry, what happened?
Someone's talking in the background. I don't know if it's in the room.
Yeah, I was just gonna, sorry. So that's my concern, is that it's those 3 items that are being presented in the staff report. And this goes back to a lot of the concerns that members of the Salinas City Council have been expressing as it relates to the way things are agendized on this document. I think that should have been a presentation, not an agenda item for approval. And so I don't know exactly what I'm approving. And so I would support the motion as it is, only because, it's dictating 3 options moving forward. But I hear where you're coming from, Director. And perhaps the general manager can give an update in his general manager comments.
General Counsel, you had a comment? Thanks, Roy.
Thanks, Madam Vice President. Just for legal clarification, based on how this item is agendized, it would not allow for the approval of any of the options that are presented. It's an informational item only. It would have to have been agendized for consideration and approval in the agenda title. Since it's just agendized as an update, we cannot approve any expenditure or anything related to the information that's contained within the update.
Thank you for that clarification.
So can we do this? Can we listen to the report and opt not to take action on the recommended actions?
Yes, that could be an option.
Okay, just want to put that up in there for everyone.
Director Craig.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to make this a little easier because I think we're all in agreement on 5. So I'm just going to go ahead and take both items, separate them out, and we can have a greater discussion on 16. I'll go ahead and move approval of item 5.
We've got a motion and a second on the table. Can we take the vote, please?
Director Craig,
Aye.
Director Collins, Director Jimenez,
Yes.
Director Phillips,
Aye.
Director Rocha,
Yes.
Director Silva. Aye. Alternate Vice President Tipton.
Aye.
We have 2 raised hands.
You forgot me.
No, she just called you, you didn't answer.
Oh, I couldn't hear her. Yes.
And alternate Vice President Cortese, we actually have a comment.
No, we have a comment from the public.
Yes.
Felix, yes, go right ahead.
I apologize. You've already voted on the matter. I just wanted to point out that I think because this matter is so important and the fact that there is no July meeting, I think it would be important for us to schedule a July meeting to be able to hear all of this thing in a timely fashion and deal with it. And so why not agree to schedule a July meeting now and have to wait till August? Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Let's go back. Where are we on the agenda? We are on
16.
We are on item 6, actually. Director
that's right.
Rocha.
Yes, I have a question related to whether or not the approval of this item would be essentially contracting out services currently being done by an existing bargaining unit. And can someone clarify to me whether or not this was communicated to the bargaining unit and whether or not this is something that's consistent with the contract we have?
Yes, the Ritchie trucking service is a stopgap, I guess. Now that we're becoming contractor at Madison Lane and we're having to haul from Sun Street, which was not anticipated to have happened. We anticipated moving to Sun Street by July 1st. So having to service 2 facilities would require additional help as a contractor. Now we have to provide the service to Madison Lane. There is a portion of that agreement that if we don't perform, Republic could hire somebody else, bring them in and back charge the authority. So I have had a lot of instances with my trucking outfit at times where I have a lot of people off, whether it's vacation and then someone else is sick or someone gets hurt. So having a contract vendor come in and help out during those periods is what we've done.
So you're giving me the justification for why you're bringing this forward, but I'm asking you whether or not it's consistent with the bargaining contract and if you communicated this to the bargaining unit.
Consistent with the bargaining contract. There is no bargaining contract, it's currently being negotiated. To answer that.
Yes.
We
We have passed this information on during bargaining with the OE3 group. We've informed them because of this transition period where we're operating 2 facilities, we need to have supplemental trucking. And because Caesar said, because we are a vendor and we have a call out or employees get sick all of a sudden, we have to have the ability to bring in both a driver and a truck. The only other alternative is to hire a temporary employee and buy a truck and turn around and let that employee go when the hard vacation happens and sell the truck. So this is really the way we've always operated. We've always had a background hauler that can come in on short notice, provide additional services when we're shorthanded.
Thank you for that context. But
I just want to, just for the record, this is not displacing current work performed by the bargaining unit. This is supplemental to that.
I understand that. I'm just going to give you a little bit of context on where the questioning from me comes from. I served on a school board, and for us, we were not allowed to essentially contract out for new services without having essentially a meet and confer with the bargaining unit to discuss whether or not these services could be done by that bargaining unit. Someone mentioned that there is no bargaining unit, but I've also heard that OE3 is the bargaining unit. So my question is, what is our process for contracting things out? And was that process followed here? As it relates to labor relations.
The bargaining unit does this work. The only time they bring this trucking service in is when they're unable to do that work because of illness, vacations, unexpected call outs. This is emergency trucking services. It's again intended to be a stopgap until we relocate to Madison, at which point we won't be running two facilities and need as much trucking service.
Okay, those are all of my questions.
Sorry, I had my mute on. Thank you, Director Rocha. Is there any other comment on this? I know that may have brought up some people's comments, even though they didn't pull the item. Roy, do you have any comment on it?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. It's my understanding that this item is a continuation of the current practice of the authority, meaning this entity is already under contract for emergency transportation services. With regard to the discussions with the bargaining unit, I'm not aware of that. I would have to defer to Colin just to know what exactly has been discussed. So I'll defer to Colin and Patrick on that item. But my understanding was this is just a renewal of the same contract, renewal with the same contract provider that the authority has been using for the last few years.
Thank you. That's good information to know. So with that, I will entertain a motion to approve.
Vice President Cummings, do we have public comment?
Do we? How come it's not coming up on mine? Felix, go right ahead.
Yes, first of all, to be clear, if this was the past practice last year, we became the certified union for the bargaining unit work that we perform. The drivers are now represented. Last year, they were not represented. At one of the first or second meetings we ever had with Patrick and Colin and with Caesar, we made it absolutely crystal clear that we do not approve of transferring bargaining unit work. That's what it's called with regard to PERB and the obligation that we have. We do not have the authority to hire more people, only the district does. And so we said to Patrick and Caesar, hire more staff to do the work if you need that done. We do not agree to transfer bargaining unit work. So if this was done in the past, that's fine. But effective when we became certified, we now own the bargaining unit work. And we have not been talked to about this resolution at all. Not one sentence has ever been said that we're going to approve a resolution and here it is. This is the first time I heard about it when I saw this on the agenda. So I strongly urge you not to approve this, to meet with us. We're scheduled to meet next week to talk about this. And I strongly urge you to have a July meeting because we will take our legally authorized authority to seek relief with the Public Employment Relations Board. I would hate to start a relationship having to fight to keep my work. If you let me hire people, then I will hire them, but that's your job.
Madam Chair, I don't like to be bullied by labor representatives. I move approval.
Do I hear a second? We have a motion and a second on the board. Can we call for the vote?
Director Craig?
Aye.
Director Jimenez?
No.
Director Phillips?
Aye.
Director Rocha?
No.
Director Silva?
Aye.
Alternate Vice President Tipton?
Aye.
Vice President Cummings?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Point of clarification.
with the original motion, we actually excluded complete item 6 from our consent. Was that a motion to approve all of item 6 or just item 6B?
Item 6B was full, or no?
And that's what I heard, just,
No, the original motion that Christie made, it was 1 through 4, and then she skipped item 6 completely, went to 7 on down. She did not include any of item 6 in the motion to approve the consent, I believe.
That is correct. So in my mind, that was approving all of item 6.
And that's the way the motion was made.
Okay,
Okay, that was my
perfect.
question.
Thank you for clarifying that, Drew. That moves us down to 16. Let's start with Director Phillips. You pulled the item.
I don't think I pulled it, someone did, but just for comment, it's all up in the air now until we have this meeting with all the parties there. I wouldn't know what option to look at or anything else until we sit down and talk. And so far, we haven't been able to communicate very well with Republic to find out what's going on and where they are. I went by there to check to see what kind of progress we were making on getting the facility ready for everybody to move in, and I didn't see as much progress as I hoped for. So, so I don't have strong feelings about 16. It's kind of up in the air until we have a meaningful meeting that's a week from Friday. So.
Director Craig, do you have further comment on it?
Nope, just a motion to table the item to August, please.
Do we have a second for that motion?
It clearly says in the item 16 that this only takes effect if all this delay is not resolved prior to August 2022. So at this point, this is all informational only. Why would we table an informational only item?
Respectfully, we tabled it last month. I'm asking for another month for it to be tabled.
okay, may I ask for clarification? Table informational. This is just a report, there's no action, it's just accepting the report. I'm not understanding the implications if we table a informational item. If we table it, then is that information not go in the minutes?
We tabled the action last time. We did not table the information further.
We're not taking any action on this item, we're just accepting the report.
Well, I want to do some point of clarification. Last month, it was a consideration item that we were discussing budget options. This report is an update. One has a recommendation on the option because we have been asked to comply with our transportation agreement with public services, which we are scheduled to do July 1st. We began following. So in there, you'll see it, we recommended that. We don't have the other financial options. We're there for discussion, but the recommended option is to but this really isn't just an update on where we are. I know there's a lot of new things coming and there's a meeting being scheduled. This is not an action. It's just the most current information we have is actually a lot of new information that's happened since the publishing of the agenda. But last month was a consideration. We're asking for direction related to the different budget options. Now we're pretty much, I think, attuned to the fact that we will only have one that's going to work because of the contractual obligation.
Through the chair.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna go ahead and withdraw the motion because it doesn't sound like I have a resounding approval on it, and I'll allow someone else to take the lead on 16 at this point.
So I'll entertain a motion.
Yeah, I kind of agree if it's information only. I'll move to approve.
Well, can we hear the presentation before we approve it?
I think that was the point. It's on the consent agenda just as information. My feelings on it, and I didn't pull it, but I'm going to go ahead and give my 2 cents and take the chair's liberty here. I think the feeling is that arbitrarily, by approving something on a consent agenda that is informational only, you are arbitrarily agreeing that those would be the options. And I think that we're hesitant to say that we would be limiting ourselves to those options, is my feeling. But we have a motion and a second on the table. Call for the vote. Well, any public comment on it before I go? Sorry. Seeing none, let's call for the vote.
Director Craig,
No.
Director Colin,
Aye.
Director Jimenez,
Yes.
Director Phillips,
Aye.
Director Butchak,
Yes.
Director Silva. Aye. Alternate Vice President Tipton,
Aye.
Vice President Connie.
No. Okay, we got past the consent agenda in an hour. So let's move on to presentations here.
Careful,
Organic.
the Warriors game's on, you know.
I know, and I usually run a quick meeting, guys. Let's get this moving. Item 17 is Organics Technology Feasibility Study. Patrick, you're going to give this presentation. Talk fast.
And Tracy Bill with SCS Engineers. As you all may recall, we prepared a very extensive SB 1383 operating plan for both the authority and all of our member agencies. It's really a guideline document to help guide us down the pathway in line with these new mechanics, waste recovery and diversion laws. The final piece of that work from SCS was to evaluate advanced organics processing technologies. Some of you may be aware of things like autoclaving, which we have looked at for many years, as well as anaerobic digestion and other types of technologies that allow us to recover organic material that's still embedded in waste stream. Because we know we're not going to get it all out simply by public and commercial participation. Still going to be organics in our waste stream. And there's a lot of new technologies out there right now that can help get us into compliance with 1383, other than just using curbside collection programs. So with that, we had SCS do an overview and to contact and evaluate a number of different technologies and provide us some feedback on which ones they feel are most viable and most cost effective that the authority could consider. So again, this is an informational item tonight just to introduce the board to the concept of advanced organics processing and to hear a little bit about some of the different technologies and how they can assist all of us agencies. So is Tracy on that?
I am on.
Tracy Bill, thank you.
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay.
You can.
Okay, perfect. So thank you all for having me here today. Thanks, Patrick, for that introduction. So this is basically an overview of the report and the research that we did. Salinas Valley Recycles is considering various options for processing organic materials generated by its member agencies, as Patrick had mentioned. In order to make an informed decision, SVR contracted with SCS Engineers to research and review various anaerobic digestion, autoclave, and pre-processing technologies, and to provide input on the financial and technical viability of these technologies. What we talk about during this presentation is the project background, types of technologies, companies interviewed, the scoring and ranking system that we developed, as well as the results. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this project included various options to process organics. The goal was to achieve a high level of organics diversion and compliance with Senate Bill 1383. SVR wanted to understand the different anaerobic digestion, autoclave, and pre-processing technologies to help provide an informed decision by SVR staff. The study also looked at the financial and technical viability of these technologies. Next slide, please. So our role was to contact vendors to obtain reference and other information on aspects of their technology. We started by developing key criteria, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and a scoring and ranking methodology for evaluating the technologies. We researched potential technologies, we then scored and ranked those technologies, and then we developed a matrix to compare the scores. The following information highlights each technology and vendors that were interviewed for the study. Next slide. So the types of technologies we looked at include the pre-processing, wet and high solids, anaerobic digestion, and autoclave. And I'm going to explain those right now. So pre-processing is used for assisting with removing contamination and increase the efficiency and energy output of the AD system, or composting for that matter. Assist with a clean byproduct for an increase in marketability and revenues, and such things as depackagers, shredding, screens, that kind of thing. SVR already has a depackager, the Scott system, which is used for compost pre-processing in order to remove contaminants. If you move on to wet anaerobic digestion, or wet AD systems, they use organic material consistency of 10 to 20% dry matter or less. So what that means is basically it's mostly wet with a little bit of dry matter. And then dry high solids anaerobic digestion systems use organic matter with consistency of 20 to 40% dry matter. So most of it is actually dry. As we know, food is actually pretty wet, but that actually deals with contamination a little differently. An autoclave applies high heat and pressure to the material inside. Autoclaving waste helps to pasteurize, homogenize, and hydrolyze the organic material in trash. This makes it easier to separate organic matter from contaminants and to convert it into energy through anaerobic digestion or other products. Go ahead and go on to the next slide. So SDS provided SVR with an initial list of 46 companies and narrowed down to 7 companies in each category with 3 autoclave companies. These companies were identified based on our industry knowledge, vendors that had approached SVR, and our previous experience conducting similar studies. The final list focused on vendors who have a strong reputation for providing systems for clients with similar needs as SVR. Next slide. So the following pre-processing companies were contacted. The bold companies were responsive, which included Energia, Dota, Drenco, Scott Equipment, Van Dyke Recycling Solutions, and Tiger. And there was, the normal font is the ones that actually did not respond to us, and there's just one, Comar Industries. Next slide. These are the high solids AD companies that were contacted. The responsive companies were Convertis, Hitachi Zosen, Drenco, and Thony. And then Biofirm, Biogest, and then Zero Waste Energy did not respond to our request. Next slide. And these are the wet AD companies that were contacted. And the responsive companies were Energia and Stormfisher, and the others did not respond to our request. Next slide. These are all 3 autoclave companies, and they did speak with us: Hughes, Nowon, and Waste Away. All right, so next slide, we'll get into the scoring. So the development of organics processing systems are a significant undertaking, and therefore a feasibility study must evaluate the opportunities and the risks associated with siting, designing, and operating such a facility. Using our experience conducting similar studies for solid waste facilities, SES identified the potential constraints and benefits of the project and developed a methodology and criteria critical to the evaluation and selection process for organics pre-processing and AD technologies. So as you can see on the left, there's the criteria. We had 2 different criteria. So we had the technology criteria and financial. This just shows the technology. So the technology criteria includes things like status of technology, years of operating history, vendor qualifications, feedstock of material, etc. When we then developed a scoring system based on assigning a weight and point value to each criteria identified during the constraints and criteria evaluation. Weighting factors were included for each criteria, so the matrix could rank the potential technologies for highest to lowest score. The top ranked technology, and this is important, the top ranked technology is not necessarily the best technology. The ranking only serves to provide SVR a sense of which technology appears to have a system that best suits the criteria and the goals. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. This one discusses the financial criteria, so things such as capital and operational costs, tipping fee, whether the company provides financing options, that sort of thing. So when you're looking at this, you see the line, the criteria, you see the weight. That weight was established by the authority. It's basically priority, like what's more important. And then if you look at the scoring detail, as well the point scale system, as an example with capital costs, if you had less than $200,000 per ton cost for that technology, they would get a point of 2, but it's weighted because it's really important at a 4. So the total score for that technology under that criteria would be 8. And the reason that we do it this way is to try to create an apples to apples perspective of each technology, because going through the research, you will see, at least if you read the report, each technology is a little different. So this is our way of trying to establish kind of a more apples to apples representation among the different technologies. Go ahead and go on to the next slide. So here's some additional criteria that we did for pre-processing, just some other things that we thought was important specifically for pre-processing. So example, like if material is appropriate for wet or high solids or dry AD, and if the material is appropriate for composting. So sometimes with pre-processing, depending on the output, the type of technology at the end use will be different. Go ahead and change the next slide. So here are the results for pre-processing. A number of the companies did not respond, as I've mentioned, to the multiple attempts, unfortunately. But the highest ranking of who we did actually talk to was Tiger, Energia, and Van Dyke Recycling Solutions. Tiger and Energia were relatively low in cost. Products were appropriate for wet and high solids AD, as well as composting, lower power and water requirements, and are able to provide the turnkey AD system. Dranco did not provide financial data, so that is why their score is a little bit lower, I would say artificially lower than the others. Okay, next slide. So these are the results for the high solids AD. Hitachi Zosen and Dranco can process mixed waste mixed waste material with over a 90% landfill diversion rate, which is really great. Dranco overall score was hurt by a lower financial score, and that could just be the information they'd given us. Most of the people that most of the businesses that we talk with these technologies, they were hesitant to provide financial information, not knowing specifics to what the potential project would be. So moving forward, if they were given more specific information, the financials may appear a little bit differently, but they were a little afraid to provide too much of the financial side. Hitachi Zosen overall score was hurt a little bit by not providing information about the percentage of organics sent to landfill. And they may or may not know that, or they may not have wanted to commit that information quite yet. Again, not knowing 100% of what the request may be in the future. Go ahead and move on to the next slide. So here are the results for the wet AD. Energia was able to process mixed waste material at a low cost, has over a 90% landfill diversion rate, and able to provide a turnkey AD system, creating 30 green jobs. And Stormfisher can also process mixed waste feedstock, and is able to provide a turnkey AD system, creating 20 to 25 green jobs. All right, so next slide, and we're going to talk about the Autoclave Technologies, which is essentially all three companies. They're very similar, able to process MSW and send less than 10% of the incoming organics to landfill, which is great for 1383, have a low water usage and power requirement. And now its landfill diversion rate was a little bit lower, but overall, all of them were very similar. Next slide. So additional findings, for most technologies, a lot will depend on the actual composition of the feedstock. And this was where the hesitancy came with some of the responses to our questions. They really want to be able to see the material that they're going to be dealing with. So they gave some average numbers, but they really wanted to understand the composition of the feedstock. Most companies plan to produce RNG, or renewable natural gas. which is other end products could include compost, biochar, pellets that can replace coal, that sort of thing. And then companies have varying levels of concern about processing the organic fraction of municipal solid waste. So basically removing the organics from the trash and processing that way compared to source separated organics, which is a much cleaner product. And with that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Tracy.
The warriors.
Do we have any questions from the board? I'm seeing none. What about questions from the listeners? Public, do you have any questions? I don't see any. Erica, you see any?
No.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Tracy. That was a wonderful presentation. Patrick, do you have anything to add?
Well, I just want to thank Tracy for all the work she did. It's like herding cats to get these companies to be responsive, and I think that itself is a monumental lift. But yeah, staff will be coming back and wanting to talk about this in greater detail in the near future as we start to roll out some of the other programs that share, because this really is a much simpler way to recover the hard organics. We don't get it through our curbside program. And there are a lot of things in the waste stream that are really hard to recycle curbside. Dirty paper, one of them. That is, we don't always talk about that, but paper products are part of organics. And so looking at recovering fiber and looking at recovering really mixed food waste and things that may be more difficult to separate. We've seen a couple of these technologies live in person. So we may be asking if there's an interest in the board in forming a commission like our old Conversion Technology Commission, one focused on organics, and actually going out and looking at some of these technologies and seeing if there's an interest in pursuing this, because it not only helps us meet 1383 mandates, but it makes the landfill. And just thank you, Tracy, appreciate it. All I had.
From me, thank you so much for a well put together presentation and easy to understand graphs. And
Absolutely, I'm glad you felt that way.
I actually could read them. I loved it. Thank you so much.
No problem. Have a good night.
You as well. We are moving on to item 18, Edible Food Recovery Grant Funding Award. Mandy Brooks, take it away.
Thank you. Can everyone on the Zoom hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. So we're very excited tonight actually to give the board an update on our edible food recovery program, which is a requirement, 1383. That's been my whole life for the past couple of years, 1383, 1383, 1383. And we're also announcing the recipients of our first pilot award grant program for 5 local feeding organizations that work here in Monterey County, which I have representatives joining us tonight. So thank you all for bearing with us. So a little bit of history about the Edible Food Recovery Program. It's a technical advisory committee, or TAC, which is a subcommittee of the larger 1383 TAC that was established to implement specifically edible food recovery programs. So since food and hungry people knows no boundaries, this countywide TAC is a collaborative effort. And the co-chair is myself and the City of Monterey's Sustainability Manager, Ted Terrasas. Other members include our member agencies, the City of Salinas, along with 2 peninsula cities, as well as Monterey Regional Waste Management District staff, who Kristen O'Hara, who made over as business friendly, is here, and she's going to help do the presentations when we get to that part of it. So thank you for being here. So when we think about edible food recovery,
we immediately went to our existing relationships with the food bank from Monterey County. And this TAC group had reached out early on to the food bank to hopefully expand our partnership. But unfortunately, we have not been successful to date in being able to work collaboratively with the food bank. We'll continue to do that, but for right now, we had to move forward with the program. So the authority partnered with Blue Stripe Environmental, and they have been integral in assisting us in laying the groundwork for establishing this new program, because we don't deal in edible food recovery, we deal in the waste and what comes of it when it's not used. This will also help lead us into moving forward with our tier 1 and tier 2 edible food recovery generator inspections, again, required by 1383. Yes. Thank you. Okay, so not only did Blue Stripe Environmental help create the and implement what we started off with initial food pantry survey work, and we'll review those results here shortly, but they also helped us identify tools, service apps, and best practices in order to also draft a countywide edible food recovery capacity plan, again, required by 1383. So the high-level summary of our food pantry results, there were a total of 95 organizations that we were able to identify. Unfortunately, we had to start this in the middle of COVID, so that was horrible timing, but I'm glad that we did do it because it gave us some results. So of those 95 organizations, 23 were closed, in fact, due to COVID. Of the 46 organizations that did respond to the survey, 80% completed the survey, and of those, 97% are considered food recovery organizations, which is different than a food recovery service. A food recovery organization is an entity that engages in the collection and receipt of edible food from a food generator and distributes that edible food to the public either through their own means or through a nonprofit or like the food bank. 70% of the survey respondents said that they described our programs as food pantries versus like a kitchen or a shelter. A majority of the respondents were located in the Salinas area at 46%, and 35% were located in the district's service area. 58% or over half of the capacity actually comes from just 3 organizations. Each of those organizations recovers between 25,000 to 50,000 pounds of food per month. And those are Children, Country, and Lives, which services the South County and King City area, Boys and Girls Club of Salinas and Seaside, as well as the Salvation Army of Salinas. The top 3 limitations that the survey respondents comment on was lack of refrigeration or freezing equipment, staffing, and donations of or sourcing of food. So based on those survey results, tools, and best and current available data that was available, a countywide edible food capacity plan was drafted and completed at the beginning of this year through Blue Stripe Environmental. So the recommendations from that plan indicate that there is a need to expand the food recovery network that exists. There's definitely the food bank does a great job, and there's an existing network, which is great. But as well, there is a need to increase capacity for those nonprofits and organizations in order for them to recover more edible food. So this TAC for edible food decided that a pilot grant program should be developed and to begin increasing that local capacity for food recovery so those organizations would be able to accept, collect, transport, store, and distribute more edible food. So the TAC worked again with Blue Stripe to develop a very simple grant application. We wanted to make it as easy as possible for the nonprofits to apply because we know most of them don't have grant writers on staff. So the pilot grant funding is based on a total amount of $100,000 for this fiscal year, and that is split directly between the authority's contribution as well as the district's contribution of $50,000 each. The grant solicitation was only released to the 14 feeding organizations or food pantries that were the most responsive to the survey. So this was a limited, that's why we're calling it a pilot grant, because we only opened it up to a limited group. And each of the applicants could apply for up to $20,000. The funding can also only be spent on purchasing equipment or infrastructure that will increase capacity, as well as staffing, donations, or again, sourcing of food. The applications were then reviewed by a subgroup of our TAC, which is members made up of the Blue Stripe team, cities of Monterey, city of Salinas, the district, and myself. The scoring criteria is based on various factors, including cost, effective, and reasonableness of the budget, ability to serve more than one community, and the percent increase of capacity. And that can be measured in terms of increased meals served per day, or pounds per month, or per year of food recovered. And then the individual scores were then totaled and averaged to give it for each applicant. Thanks. Okay, so a total of 13 organizations applied, which is great. We received over $200,000 in ask, and the top 5 highest scoring applicants will each be awarded $20,000. Again, $10,000 from the authority, $10,000 from the district. And those entities include Pajaro Valley Loaves and Fishes, which serves the North Monterey County and Pajaro areas, Dorothy's Place, which serves the city of Salinas area, Meals on Wheels of the Salinas Valley, which serves the entire Salinas Valley, Victory Mission, serving Salinas as well as Peninsula cities, and Shoreline Church, which services all of the county and cities. So, to ensure that the funds are spent based on the budget for the grant submitted and listed here in this table, each awardee will receive a grant agreement, which they've already received, and we hope to have signed grant agreements back by the end of beginning of next week. The grant term is for the rest of this calendar year, so through December. And they will also be reporting their expenditures on a quarterly basis because they're receiving the funds up front. So we will actually deliver the actual checks or funds once those grant agreements are fully executed. From this whole process, we're actually hoping to also award next fiscal year's grants as well, since we're right at the end of this fiscal year, starting the next fiscal year, and we would do that based on the remaining applications' next highest scores. So with that, I would like to call up Kristen O'Hare, the district. They have graciously provided us with our checks that we will be awarding. And of course, we're research recovery and recycling, so we didn't want to do big giant checks, so these can actually be recycled. Don't have to be the and we also will call up each of our representatives. So I don't know with Pajaro Valley, I don't think she was able to make it. So that was Ashley Bridges. She's the executive director. So we will hopefully award tomorrow. But then we have Dorothy's Place. Jill Allen is the executive director, and I know she's here with us. Jill. And then we have Meals on Wheels, Lori Mensch. Look, that was close, right? That was close. Okay. And Victory Mission, I know we have Steve and Frank have joined us, and then Shoreline Church. Pastor Roy is here with us as well. So, do we want to do a group picture? I also want to open it up to questions, and maybe if anyone would like to hear from the organization, we have 2 seconds to think. Have a minute. But you're welcome to say take a picture. Yeah, I'll take a picture.
Well, absolutely. Let's take a group picture of everybody.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm Lori Bend with Meals on Wheels of the Salinas Valley, and I just want to say thank you so much. This is going to really help us with expanding our programs. We keep it senior goes hungry.
I'm Jill Allen with Dorothy's Place in Salinas, and this generous opportunity will allow us to double our freezer space, which means we will be able to recycle a lot more food and serve more people. And all of our people are chronically unsheltered people in Salinas.
Hi, Steve Guerrero, the operations manager at Victory Michigan. We're at Gregory. I just want to thank SVR and all those involved in this opportunity to be a part of this grant program. We are all excited about using this funding to expand our adequate food recovery services and make an impact for those in need in our community. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Roy Pena, Shoreline Church, actually receiving this on behalf of Sharon Burwell, who is the brains and the brawn of the organization. And we just want to say thank you for allowing us to participate in this. Looking forward to using this both to the letter and the spirit, which is given.
All right, so I will open it up for board comments or questions, and then we'll take a picture.
I have some comments and a question too. So comment first, man, thank you for all that you guys do. That's such like understated comments, given everything that's gone on these last couple of years. So just a heartfelt thank you for what you do. Good question. So I see for Dorothy's Place, this listed as location serves City of Salinas, but I believe you guys are helping out in King City we had the homeless encampment fire, and I believe you are helping provide food for those displaced residents of the homeless encampment. Like an oxymoron there. But yeah, okay. So and thank you for that.
And that's a tremendous effort by many people in the City of King and county offices to basically rescue these families. And it's just wonderful to see this effort and be able to work with that group of people to help these families.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Okay, so it's picture time for those on Zoom. Put your smiles on. Just be careful. Let's go this way so we don't trip on any wires.
I don't know if you guys can hear us, but thank you so much for everything you do.
Great job.
Please, well, I mean, I don't know if it's squeeze it. As much as whatever you feel comfortable.
Should we get the owl in there?
The owl.
Okay, do another one. Thank you. 1, 2. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we'll see you tomorrow at the district's board meeting for the same pony show. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mandy. That was wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you.
The Warriors are up 54-39.
You don't need to ask all before you get scores like that. Just maybe take a look.
Is that a thing anymore?
Okay, that definitely was a feel-good presentation. Mandy always brings us the best things. Are we ready?
No.
Yeah.
Well, we can't even see that.
These are dead. Well, we can.
You can?
Well, we got. There we go.
Okay. We ready to move on?
Not just a moment, Christine.
Okay.
There you go. We go.
Yay!
Sure.
Landfills.
Bring over the next coverage.
Right.
Madam President, are we ready to get started?
Yes, yes, please. Item 19, landfills 101.
So, the request of Vice President Tipton, we're providing the board tonight with a tag team overview of everything it takes to run a landfill. From the politics to the operations to the resource recovery to the financing. And everything in between. So I'm going to lead off with sort of just an introductory. Next slide, please. So you can see we have a very large district. The agency started out with 4 landfills, and the wisdom dictated that we close 3 of them and consolidate all of our operations into one facility, which is now the Johnson Canyon Landfill. Serves the entire Salinas Valley district from Santa Clara County line down to San Luis Obispo. So, next slide, please. Why do we have landfills? Well, they all started out as a need to get rid of our waste products, the byproducts of human existence. In the old days, landfills used to be built in dry washes, especially in California, because you could conveniently burn all the garbage. And then when the winter came and you had the flood and the dry wash, you'd have a whole new landfill for the next year. And that is actually very common. The Crazy Horse landfill was originally a burn site. The Buena Vista landfill in Santa Cruz County was also originally a burn site. But they've been modernized, and we moved forward to more modern design landfills, which you'll hear a little bit more about in a few minutes. Landfills serve a lot of different purposes. They help us during emergencies, natural disasters, and not everything we generate right now can be recycled, though we are striving for that. Landfills still are unfortunately a necessary evil in our system, but they serve an important purpose. And then finally, one of the most important parts of the regulations for us is all communities have to have 15 years of landfill capacity. Whether it's their own landfill or they have contracts for in excess of 15 years with an adjacent landfill, that is a state law. Fortunately, the authority has over 45 years of capacity right now, so we're sitting good. And hopefully with new technologies like we heard about earlier, we can take that landfill and make it last pretty long. Exciting. So politics of landfill. Well, landfills, everybody needs a landfill. No one wants a landfill near them. Go to the next slide, please. So there's a lot of case studies on this. I personally have experienced some of these. Santa Cruz County in the 90s, we looked for a new landfill site to replace the Buena Vista landfill, which is about to run out of capacity in less than 10 years. And I can tell you that was not a pretty process. No one wanted the landfill there. Building new landfills in California aren't happening. It's almost impossible. We have a very similar activity going on right next door to us in San Benito County, where they're doing a massive expansion of their landfill. They were the lucky recipients of our South County tract. For those of you who've been around a while, we imported garbage from Morgan Hill and Gilroy and South Santa Clara County for many years. Decided that was not in our best interest to keep using our landfill space to serve an out of district client. And of course, that waste had to find someplace to go. It ended up in San Benito. And right now, it's temporarily being diverted to the Monterey Regional landfill, while that county considers expansion, right? A very significant expansion. And there's a lot of public opposition. So we have to preserve what we have. That really is a patient here. We're not building new landfills in California. We need to keep pushing new technologies to take what we do have, keep extending the life of those landfill assets. Next slide. So those of you who have driven through San Diego County, you'll see these signs everywhere. There's a very well organized grassroots effort to stop the expansion. Primarily that expansion is going to serve out of county's interests. San Diego doesn't generate that much garbage, but they're building a landfill that can actually serve swaths of Santa Clara County. And the community is beginning to show opposition, and that really is what happens. our agency went through the same process. Looked at a landfill site count, Highway 198, back in the early 2000s. Now it's not well received either. So again, it's all about recycling and using what we have to the greatest extent possible. And then finally, as I said, non-disposal alternatives. There's just so many things I can talk about all night on, but I won't. Thank you. Composting, anaerobic digestion, new recycling programs, waste energy, conversion technologies, all these things are all part of non-landfill systems. We have a lot of opportunities in front of us. We looked at a lot of different technologies, and all of those things that you heard from Tracy tonight, those technologies that exist today, reduce what goes to your landfill by over 70%. That's significant. Take a 45-year landfill and now you make it well over 100. That's the whole goal here, is to really start to extend our diversion activities and continue to teach people just to not generate. That's really the simplest thing. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Brian Kennedy, who is our environmental compliance and engineering manager. He's online tonight. He will go through landfill design and environmental control systems. Brian, are you here?
Yep. Can you hear me, Patrick?
Yep. They're all up.
Okay, so my responsibility when it comes to our landfills is landfill design, environmental control systems, regulatory compliance, and permitting. So modern landfills are designed to keep and isolate waste from the environment to minimize impacts. These design elements include leachate collection systems, landfill gas collection systems, groundwater monitoring, and surface water monitoring. This is a picture, you can't really see, but this is a diagram of the concept. Next slide, please. So since this is Landfill 101, I'm going to compare a landfill to a freshly baked pie. So the bottom liner is like a bottom crust, and it keeps the filling away from the bottom of the pan, or in this case, the groundwater. Then you have the delicious filling, which is the garbage, and then the top crust, which is isolating the filling from the environment at the top. At the bottom, you have a leachate collection system, and it collects accumulated liquids. And then the landfill gas collection system is kind of like a straw into the pie that vents out the gases. And then on the outside of the pie, you've got straws that monitor groundwater and monitor the soil for landfill gas or methane. Next slide, please. So this is the last pie we built. It's a module 7. We completed it in 2019. It's got approximately 6 years capacity, or 1.2 million tons. The cost was roughly $5 million. This picture shows what a bunch of 20 school buses would look like inside of it. This is, of course, the liner system before we put any material in it. And some of you saw that as we built it. The next slide, please. So here's what the bottom of the pie looks like. The way the bottom's constructed, it has 3 basic components. The liner, which is the black material you see, is 80 mil high density polyethylene. And this is placed on top of a bentonite mat known as a GCL. And underneath that is about 1 foot of compacted clay, which is a low permeability material. What you don't see here on the right side is there's a drainage layer with drain rock and a bunch of collection pipes to collect that leachate. Next slide, please. So when the landfill's filled and closed, you put a cap on top of it. In this case, this is a picture of Crazy Horse when we closed it. It's typically a similar material than they have on the bottom. It's a flexible polyethylene material, and typically you put a soil on top of that, and this encapsulates, closes off your pie and makes it so no water gets inside of it. Next slide, please. So there's alternative designs for the top of your pie. What we have here is a picture of what's called an ET, or evapotranspirative cover. And this is actually at Johnson Canyon. This is actually going on right now. And what this is this an alternative design that uses about 5 feet of soil, and it acts the same. The characteristics are similar to the polyethylene liner. But the benefit here is that we have 2.3 million cubic yards of soil that we need to do something with. And so it gives us the added benefit of using materials we have on site. It's much cheaper, and we can also perform this operation as we excavate our next module. So it's much more cost effective, and we can close a landfill in real time, which has a great environmental benefit. Next slide, please. So after several years of having your garbage pie in the oven, you start generating landfill gas, and this landfill gas needs to come out of the pie. So what we do is we bore holes through the cover, and then we put perforated pipe with a drain rock gravel pack around it, and then we extract that gas coming out of the landfill. And on the right is a picture of someone monitoring. We monitor the wells monthly, and we gauge the concentration of the gas, and we adjust the collection system accordingly. Next slide, please. So the gas, in our case, goes to two sources. We have two landfill gas flares, but that just burns off the gas. And then we have a cogeneration plant, which generates electricity. That's run by a third party. But the reason we have to vent off and burn off that gas is we have to extract it so it doesn't escape the pie. It doesn't go out into the environment. We contain it so there's no surface emissions and there's no emissions laterally and horizontally. Next slide, please. So our stormwater is managed similarly. We have two stormwater detention basins. The stormwater is monitored, it's sampled, it's used primarily for dust control on site. We're lucky enough not to have any stormwater discharge from the site because our collection basins are appropriately sized. Next slide, excuse me. Again, our leachate too. So the leachate is pumped from the bottom of the pie into collection tanks. It too is monitored, it's sampled. Currently it's used for dust control on selected portions of the landfill that are line sections. Next slide, please. And then groundwater monitoring. So we have a series of groundwater wells, both what we call up gradient, which are hydraulically above the landfill, and down gradient. And we use these groundwater monitoring wells. We monitor them twice a year. We look for impacts from the landfill to see if there's any releases or any detrimental effects that affect the groundwater. And I think I'm moving on to operations. Yep, that's all yours, Caesar.
So, the operation manager and the operations department, we are tasked with oversight of our active. We also oversee the two active transfer stations, the Johnson Canyon Landfill HHW facility as well. Our goal is proper landfill operations and protocol should be based on several goals, including environmental protection, minimizing the cost and liability for the agency, and of course, the safety of the employees and the customers that are there. The day-to-day operations. This line. Go back. Go back. Go back.
One more.
All right. Overall, the oversight of day-to-day operations. We are tasked with ensuring facility and staff and able to handle and serve all our customers, including the franchise, softball, and commercial customers. We want to make sure we serve in a safe and productive and efficient way. This has been a challenge, obviously, since COVID started. We've had a lot of shortage of staff. The staff has done a great job of pushing through and servicing, and actually we continue to increase our customer base because of the customer service our staff does provide out there. Compliance is another goal of daily operations as well. We need to ensure compliance 24 hours a day. You may ask, we're not open 24 hours a day, but we need to make sure when we leave the site properly covered, prepared for storms, wind activity, vectors, different stuff that can impact the environment overnight when we're not there. Customer service and education. Our staff is tasked with regulatory compliance, regulatory safety compliance that has to do with customers, right? No checking, parking vehicles, and making sure our franchise, which we call our franchise professional drivers, are kept separate from mom and pops who may not be at all the time and may not be familiar with the operations. Maximizing the life of our asset. So this is the valley-wide action. This is our landfill. This is how we make our money to fund the thing. The majority of the money, or a good chunk of the money, comes from the landfill operation. Our job is to make sure we maximize that ass. We do that by the compaction and proper density. Then that south, so the south Brian you talked about, we're tasked with making sure we put as much trash as we can in our blocks to maximize that asset. And then operational efficiencies, track and analyze operations to ensure proper operations on a daily basis, and also try to stay within budget and reduce the cost of the overall agency. The next slide. So this is a whole picture. This is Johnson Canyon, year one, 1976. So, you know, this picture here is pretty much where it all starts, right? Customers come in, they visit, get them off, and we run down the menu of options we have, right? You have diversion, you have recycling, you know, drop a few metal there, drop a cardboard there, drop this over there, organic over here. So that's where all the education starts. We also do the load taking, we have to do the questions, we have to paint, oils, chemicals. And a lot of them say, yeah, we do, I don't know, can I get rid of it here? And we educate them, yes, we have an A-bomb drop it off here. Yes, we have this over there, drop it off there. Or you can go to 100 pounds of hazardous waste. So that's where we start at the scale house for day-to-day. So is to direct loads to the proper drop-off location. We ensure the vehicle is parked separate from franchise, separate from public. For that same reason, franchise drivers we consider professional drivers. They visit us numerous times a day throughout the year, and mom and pops may go once or twice through the meeting, right? They don't visit us very often. So we want to make sure we keep them safe. Next, please. So this is a D9. This picture is a D9, and those are large buildings like that. We actually have a DT, the D18 is a little smaller than this one. But a builder like this is you can push the max. Once it's dropped on the track on the tipping pad, so you can push the mass. You can see right there, large mass, and then spread that out in about 1 foot increments. And that allows the compactor, which is coming up next, to compact that trash in small layers to make sure we can maximize density on that. This unit here weighs about 86,000 pounds, and the cost of replacing today is probably about $1.1 million. Okay. This unit here, the unit we actually have at Johnson Canyon, we purchased in 2014. The life on these are about 5 years, 10,000 hours roughly. We go by hours on machines. This is already on its second life when we have a job. We rebuild the engine, transmission, second life. By the time we're done with it, we have about 20,000 hours on it. And that will be anticipating, will probably be coming forward for replacement probably about 2024, that range. And we are setting the money aside to replace this equipment. We do have an ongoing capital budget that we set up when we took over the operations. Next slide, please. This is the compact. This is the workhorse of the landfill. This is actually maximizes and extends the life. This unit is used to kind of compact or smash down that trash and replace it in one foot. As we do it, so this thing can reduce it down to maybe 6 inches, 4 inches, and maximize that life of that landfill. This unit is a big boy. This one's an 836. This unit weighs about 116,000 pounds. Replacement cost of about $1.4, $1.5 million. We do the same thing with it. We maximize life. We use it 10,000 hours to build the engine. That'll run about $100,000 to build the engine, the powertrain. And then we'll use it another 4 or 5 years. We'll accrue the money, and then we'll buy it as well. So we maximize the indoor equipment. We also have a baby called Baby compactor, an 826. And that unit weighs about 86,000. Next slide, please. Scraper, we've been earlier this year, actually in December, the board approved purchase of a scraper for the excavation project that Brian was talking about. We're doing the model cover. We're using the soil that we have at Johnson to kind of do a rolling closure. So that unit is used to excavate soil from our future module from the soil stockpile. And currently, we have 3 of these on site. We have the real old one we bought initially. That's tired and probably retired pretty soon. We have a second unit that's used for the landfill to move soil for daily cover or extend the cover. And then there's a third one that's being used by Ryan's crew to do the local coder. Next slide, please. So regulatory compliance, we are tasked with many different agencies we got to please. We got Monterey County Planning and Management. They pretty much dictate what we can do on our property. Monterey County Environmental Health, the LEA, they come out and they're kind of enforcement arm for Cal Recycles. So they come out monthly
And they check our facility, they check our tipping pad, our tonnage, our records, our MRC, or they check us for dust control, litter, training, and then they come out monthly and check each facility. And then they check our closed sites quarterly. So even though they're closed, it's still good to the LEA on a quarterly closed sites. Cal Recycle is the ultimate solid waste permit that we have. They actually come out every 18 months. And they do an 18-month inspection at the facility, and most of the time, the early birds like to come out first thing in the morning, usually they're like 6 in the morning, because they want to observe to make sure that you covered that facility and you close it the right way. Regional Water Quality Control Board, same thing. They like to hit us and they do walk the whole site to make sure that we're draining properly, we're not ponding on top of the landfill, we're not creating nuisance, and we're not having blow off that already on the landfill, which could expose waste, come in contact with water, run off. They don't want that. So that's the Regional Water Board. And then Monterey Bay Air Resources District, they oversee our flares, natural gas, surface emissions, and organics as well. And then CARB oversees the yellow iron. We got to make sure we report every year on our off-road equipment, and they also oversee our on-road equipment to make sure we're in compliance with CARB. So garbage is covered daily, either by tarps or with dirt. So this is our tarp cover. So we use tarp to expand the life of the landfill. So every time you use dirt, it's 6 inches of dirt minimum, and it ends up being more of that dirt filters through the crevices of the trash. So that's earth space that we use. So in order to maximize the life of our asset, we like to use tarps. Tarps get pulled on and off every day. We spend about $35,000 a year on tarps. That buys us about 50 by 100 tarps. And we utilize them throughout the year. We do have a permit to have extended usage, so we can keep the tarps on for kind of shingled. And if we have a big space, we can keep them shingled, and we pull off whatever we're going to work on. We can keep them on for up to 7 days before I pull. Next slide. And then there's also soil. We can cover with soil, but we don't like it. So the only time we cover with soil is when we're done filling the south, or we're covering the outside soil. Next slide. Dust control is another regulated section of the landfill. The air board is for dust control. If you have emissions going off site or like that, the LA comes in to make sure you're not dusting out customers, you have proper access roads as well. So dust control is a critical item at the landfill. But one thing we've talked to the board in the past is setting aside money for a while, Johnson. That's the project that's ongoing. We're pretty close to having a solution for that. But that is something we don't have off site at Johnson. So we go off site to get our water currently for dust control, and we do require anywhere from 3 to 5 truckloads a day just to minimize the dust and water, the active phase and the atmosphere. So, load checking. We're also load checking our spotters and scale house staff come in here to the site to us. If you have any paint, oils, chemicals, batteries, and we'll tell you where to put them. We also find that they're trained for load checking off the pull any abandoned material. A lot of public do not know that we take this material. We have an HHW, we'll take certain stuff to landfill. So in order to get rid of the hang, our staff is trained to load check, find stuff, and we do have pathogens at the active phase would actually store abandoned material, and then our HHW can then fix that up, takes it over the process. Next slide. So traffic safety, that is our #1 priority. Why is that a priority? Backing up at a landfill not being seen is one of the highest causes of fatalities at landfills. It is a very dangerous industry. I think I believe we're in the top 10 for fatalities industry wide. So a lot of instances that in here, I think there was actually one in John Smith 2 or 3 years ago where they were seeing a dozer was backing up and so was killed. So traffic is our #1 priority for the same reason that we have professional drivers. You know, a lot of cops who may not understand where to go or to park. So that's all we emphasize and talk about this all the time. We do have complete training with our employees, and we do tailgates anytime we have something that comes out of the then speed regular medium. Next slide. And then we also run the Autoclave Technologies, which is Salinas. That facility has been around since 2000, I believe, or 99, and it continues consistently to pull about 1.4 million pounds of hazardous waste a year from residents of the Salinas Valley. So we keep taking that material, keeping that out of landfills, waterways, or backyards where it can leach out or contaminate groundwater as well, and leach through the soil. So hazardous waste is probably the biggest thing that people don't know we do. So if you're able to get the word out there, we do take it for free. We help out residents take up to 125 pounds a month from residents that can visit us every month. But this is something that definitely needs to get the word out there to the public and make sure that they get this to the proper location. And with that, I'll turn it over to Manny.
Just out of curiosity, do you actually monitor the 125 pounds or do you?
We do, but we're supposed to by law, but if you're a little bit over, we'll take it.
Well,
and we do have a law. The guys actually do remember the staff does remember frequent visitors.
That's my question. Yeah. I guess it's coming in like every other day. Whoa.
Yeah.
Yes, Director Tippin, if you come in every day, we will flag you. Don't worry, because, okay, so I'm going to change focus just a little bit. It's all obviously related, but resource recovery and diversion programs are actually, their focus is to reduce the amount of material that we send to the landfill that Caesar and Brian just talked about. Preserving that valuable space, right? That's the asset. That's what we own in the landfill, is the space. That's the highest value. The diversion and recycling programs, they save energy, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. There's also numerous economic benefits. For every 1 ton that you recycle versus landfilling, you create 5 times more jobs. And we already know in California, and I won't list them all, but there are so many state mandates that require these recycling programs to happen. Obviously, most recently, the 1383 votes annex. So the following are some of our bulky item diversion programs that the authority operates at each of the facilities. Operations takes the majority of the brunt of those programs. However, most of these programs are considered extended producer responsibility programs, which just allows the cost of processing and disposal to be incorporated into the total cost of that product. And how we see it as consumers is usually on the front end when you're purchasing a new mattress or a new computer, there's a recycling fee, and that's what helps to help with the end disposal costs. So resource recovery, our department actually tracks and reports on all of these programs. And this information is reported during the annual regional agencies 939 program to CalRecycle, which the authority does on behalf of our cities. So in addition to the full HHW facility that Caesar mentioned earlier, Johnson Canyon as well as the Little Road Transfer Station both have ABOPs, and that is antifreeze, batteries, used motor oil and filters, as well as latex paint. We also offer electronic waste recycling at all of our sites. And again, Resource Recovery administers the contracts with our e-waste recycler to properly dispose of that material. We also have the MRCs, or material recovery centers, at each of our facilities, where customers can drop off the more traditional recycling materials for free: glass, paper, cardboard, plastic, and metals. ANS Metals is actually the current recycler for us and takes and processes these materials. And again, Resource Recovery tracks and reports all of these programs on the annual 8939 report to CalRecycle. So the main focus, as we all hopefully are aware, that the main diversion program focus has been organics. So the 2 mandatory organics diversion requirements, 1826 for the commercial businesses, and then 1383 really more focused on methane emissions reductions, and it basically applies to anyone producing any kind of organic material. So not only does the Resource Recovery manage, track, and report on all these programs, but we also have a robust outreach and education program and a team of staff that help businesses, schools, and the public change the behaviors and implement these requirements. So again, our organics program for composting of the yard waste and packaged materials from the ag industry, and now food scraps from our residents and businesses, is our largest diversion program, recovering over 45,000 tons per year. So in addition to the collection of the organics by the haulers, which we have one with us tonight, this hall franchise for waste management in the city, the county, Republic Services in Salinas, Tri-Cities Disposal. So they collect the material, and then the composting of that material obviously happens at our new facility, which, as a reminder, starting July 1, Atlas Organics will be taking over operations. But we also are actively working on building the local capacity for that food rescue and recovery to divert more edible food from the waste streams. And I just gave a presentation on that, so I won't belabor that anymore. So I think that's my end of the presentation. I'll turn it over to finance, to Ray, who I'm sure will tell you research recovery costs money, and we do. Recycling is not free. Thank you.
I wasn't agree.
Yeah.
Well, since you did it. Landfills are expensive, second more expensive, and I'll do that. So, one slide, lots of information. At the landfill, we have lots of state, regional, and local fees. All those agencies that come and monitor us, that Caesar talked about, well, we pay them to do that. We have a hosted fee in Gonzales. We pay $1.60 to the State Board of Equalization. The airport fees, water fees, we pay for the SVR, we have regional fees, all in total a little over $800,000 in just fees that we pay for the pleasure of having a landfill. Ongoing operational costs, the all-in cost of that landfill is about $8.7 million next year. So we have the operational costs of a little over $3.5 million. $500,000 for those environmental control systems, just the monitoring part that Ronnie talked about. We have to set aside money for closure, and board has directed us to start setting aside money for post-closure. We were fortunate to have funded years in the past with that last cell. The economy picked up, and we were fortunate to have some surplus that we released to build that last cell, but the board made the decision to allow us to start setting aside money for the next cell, which is another $1 million. So, and then on top of that, we're required to set aside for closure. The current estimate for closing Johnson Canyon is a little over $7.6 million. We do have $1.9 million set aside. We are not allowed to touch that until it's declared fully funded. We are currently working on a rolling closure, but that is kind of intertwined with the excavation of the new cell that we're working going forward, and we're kind of funded the quality assurance and sequel on it. We also have pledge of revenues for post-closure. We're estimating 30 years of maintaining that site at $6.2 million. We did start setting aside money for that. We're about 1/3 full. We're about 1/3 funded, so we're about right where we should be on that. And we also have to have pledge of revenues for what it's called environmental impairment. So it basically means we signed a paper telling the state, the water board, the air board, that if our landfill costs a release, we promise to find the money to pay for any damage that it makes. So we have been using surpluses to fund that. We currently have a little over $2 million set aside for environmental impairment. The goal is Crazy Horse, which is the biggest landfill, the one that would cost the most money. The estimate for Johnson Canyon right now is a little bit 1.1 million. So what we could think the worst case scenario, so they would have at that landfill. That is, then you get to the diversion programs that Manny talked about. Our organics program is a little over $2 million next year. The recycling, the SV, the on the ground recycling crew is another $500,000. But a lot of money. I guess hear me talk about this in a later side. I'll just leave it at that. The other stuff at the fun part. And I guess we're having any questions.
That's Landfill 101.
Perfect. Thank you.
That's more than I wanted to do. Hold on as well. Maybe not necessarily as technically in depth, but just to show all the things that actually go into this that people don't think about. Because all people think about, like Salinas or Greenfield, is my garbage gets picked up. What happens to it? That's what they think.
True, that's not technically in depth, because like that managers meetings where I wanted what they're talking about. That is actually Brian's description is actually the cleanest I ever seen him explain that.
I'm an engineer, trust me, I understand that. I haven't done technical at the moment, you're your seat, so I understand. This is the reason all of you show up here every month. Exactly. Or online, and EC shows up every month to talk about this. This is the business for it.
Yeah, I do have a question, and it's and the comment was made earlier about the landfill is our asset, but the other asset that we kind of intangible more like is the people. And I think there's a really good opportunity for those that spoke is to tell us when you got hired by the authority, what you got hired for originally, and some of the roles that you've had over the years. Because I think that's important for us to know. And we could count. I think Mandy probably holds the record for the most number of titles over the years. Maybe no. Okay. Okay. So when for each of you, when did you start? What was your first role, and some of the roles that you've had over the years?
So, April 1st, 2001.
That explains a lot.
I was a landfill inspector under the city of Salinas wing before we broke away from the city of Salinas and became Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority. Solid waste tech in 2005, field operations supervisor, 2006, operations superintendent, 2011, operations manager, 2012, and assistant GM, I believe in 2017.
That was long.
We had a new hires there, so I actually looked this up because I was curious. Caesar is employee number 8. I am employee number 18, hired in 2005 as an administrative assistant. 2 years later, I was promoted to an accounting technician when we took over the finance duties from the city of Salinas. A couple years after that, we took over the scale houses, and I became the business services supervisor, which I can never remember that title when I had it. Robert retired in 2014, and I became the finance manager. Rose left a couple of years after that, and I became the finance and administration.
They all have to be. I don't think. 9, so I've been the authority 13, almost 13 years. I started as the contracts and grants analyst, which is now filled by Elliot Zavala. And then I moved to recycling coordinator, which is Jana Falk right now. And then Susan Warner, my wonderful supervisor manager at the time, retired, and I took the associate recovery manager position maybe 5 years.
A few more in there, I guess.
It just
It's been nicknamed.
yeah.
I was hired in 2016 for the role I'm in now, so I don't have as great of a story as the others.
I was gonna say he's got at least.
You persevered. That's what that means.
I was hired in 2008. Next Thursday will be my 14th year ever.
You guys really.
Thank you. Thanks for the feedback. Any questions from our Zoom members?
Do we have any questions? Do we have any questions from the public?
Madam Chair, I don't have a question. This is Liz, but I do have a
Hi,
comment.
Liz.
And I just want to dovetail on what Rob said earlier about the employee gathering appreciation. I also will not be able to attend but it kind of goes in line with what everybody here in this room is just talking about, you know, when they started and what they've done. And if you have a chance, any of the board members, if y'all have a chance to attend that meeting on July 29th, please take advantage and do it. You will see a group of people that are very passionate about what they do. They're very dedicated to their work, and they have longevity that it's almost unheard of in these days of employers. So I remember going to the first one, and I think, was it Stella? And she's now retired. And she drove her, not Stella. What was the one from Chowchilla?
Oh, Maria.
Oh, Maria. And then you know, you have Candy at the Scale House here. She seems to enhance. So a great group of people that you do have a lot of history, and you can tell by the pride that they show when they talk about all the different roles that they played. So thanks to all the employees, and I'm sorry I won't be able to be there to join this year. Thank you.
Happy about trash. I love it. So with that, we are going to deem this report accepted. Thank you very much for going through this process for us. We greatly appreciate it. We're now going to move on to item 20, which is the view ahead schedule. Patrick?
Well, we do not have a scheduled meeting in July. Hopefully we can keep it that way. Everybody can enjoy the summer break. We do, just as a reminder, we do have a retreat coming up on the 29th. So 30th, sorry.
Communicate with
Mom's not on here. So if there's anything on the August schedule that you'd like to add, subtract, modify, please let us know, or let Eric or I know in the next month. We can accommodate that outside of that.
Anyone have any comments on the schedule? Anyone from the public? Seeing none, let's move on to closed session. This is item 21 pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6 to provide instruction to the general manager, Patrick Matthews, General Counsel Roy Santos, and Labor Counsel Colin Tanner to negotiate salaries and benefits of non-management administrative unit, operating engineers local number 3, and at-will management employees. Do we have a separate login for closed session?
We will remove public comment as well as this discussion item.
Does anyone in public comment have public comment? Felix, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say today we formally tentatively agreed to 17 of the 27 or so items on our proposed contract mutually. Both Patrick and I signed off on 17 of them. There are what I would call 10 remaining items, 5 that are minor, things like the effective date, the description of the unit. There's a dispute about one position in the unit that we're having an issue about, and a couple of other smaller ones. But the larger, more meaningful ones, of course, are what I would say the wage section, the healthcare section. We also have an issue about what I have discussed before is binding arbitration. Most, if not all, of the cities in the special district have some form of independent review of a violation of the MOU or an unjust discipline in some way. And so we think that that needs to be resolved. Our proposal makes it so that an independent arbitrator would rule on that. I had previously mentioned that in 2005, the district did create a dispute resolution process that had binding arbitration in it, but it never was presented to the board. We think the adoption of that process would be what we're proposing. The issue of health insurance is the other. And finally, one of the smaller items is, it seems ridiculous, but if somebody promotes into a position or is laterally transferred, one of the issues that we have is that employee promoted as a employee with property rights to their job. They've not been dismissed, they got promoted up. And one of the concerns that we have is if they don't pass their probation, we believe they should be able to bump back into their previously held position and not lose their job. And so there's a dispute that we have with the district about that. So we have submitted our proposals to the district today. We hope you actually review them and give direction to try to come to a resolution in the next 10 to 20 days. We have a meeting set up for next week before the end of the month. And so we're hoping to resolve it after you provided direction tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Herta. We appreciate it. Seeing no other hands, I will ask again, do we have a separate login for closed session?
Yes, we do. It was mailed out to all the people. I will email it out to the city of Salinas members, because it was sent prior to being notified that you guys would be on Zoom. So I will forward it to Director Hermes and Director Craig right now. And Director Rich, I should have received it at 4:45 this afternoon.
Perfect.
I can't hear what's being said, Madam Chair.
Director Phillips, the email for closed session was sent out at 4:45. You should have received it already, as well as Director Jimenez and Director Rocha and Council Santo and Tanner.
Okay, thank you.
So we're going to break for closed session. How long do you think that this should take, Patrick?
20 to 30 minutes.
Give us about 30 minutes, public, and we will be back into open session to close. Thank you, everyone.
Oh,
See, I got the Yankees, the Braves, the Cowboys, and the Celtics. Dawn, this is otherwise.
Can you hear us?
Yes, there we go. Okay.
I know we can hear. Yeah, that's stuff now, but yes, they're there. And they can see you.
Well, then all they have to do is reconvene the terms.
Okay, we ready?
Yes.
Okay, we are now reconvening our meeting into open session. Council, do we have anything to report out?
Nothing to announce out at this time, Madam President.
Thank you so much. With that said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Sorry
Go
we took so
Warriors.
long in closed session.
Go Warriors.
Woo! Good night. Oh, and I apologize for the dog. You can hear him snoring beside me. I know you can.
I could, it was cute.